Story 1. It was frustrating trying to record songs off the radio to make a mixtape for your portable cassette player. All your efforts seemed in vain when the tape broke. Story 2. A phone book. I handed one to my teenager during a power outage and asked them to find the number for the power company. They looked at me as if I had just grown a second head. Story 3. Having to wait to use the landline phone because it could not be used at the same time as the internet was being used. Story 4. Watching one episode per week of your favorite Saturday cartoon meant that if you overslept, you just missed it. If you were lucky, they might rerun it at the end of the season. Story 5. How wonderful it was for parents not to have the ability to check in on us when we were out with friends. No texts, calls, or GPS. We were just out completely free socializing. Story 6. Riding around until you find the house with all the bicycles in the front yard when you are looking for your friends. Story 7. I told a group of individuals in their 20s that it used to cost 10 pence to send a text message, and they responded, "Okay, Grandma, whatever you say." Story 8. Mom, there's someone on the phone for you. Who is it? I don't know. Well, is it a boy or a girl? I now know that the feeling is overwhelming. Story 9. Life without personal computers, the internet, smartphones, or social media would be vastly different. We would rely on phone books, maps, and in-person visits. Ordering something by mail or phone. Forget 2-day shipping. 4 to 8 weeks was the standard. Meeting friends would require arranging a place and time. While that is still somewhat the same, you would have to find them in person instead of texting or calling to make those final arrangements. Additionally, there would be no endless scrolling. Story 10. Being upset that your brother is using the computer, you pick up the telephone attached to the wall. Story 11. Waiting a week to watch the next episode of your favorite show and discussing it with friends at school because everyone watched it simultaneously, with no spoilers. Story 12. The amount of cigarettes and cigarette smoke was everywhere. In bars and restaurants, the walls would start to yellow if they weren't cleaned regularly. People smoked at the movies, in stores, in offices, and in hospitals. It wasn't just a few people. The air on crowded streets smelled of smoke. Even if you didn't smoke, your clothes frequently smelled like it. It was terrible. Story 13. That television, which had only about 6 to 8 channels, used to just stop broadcasting. Around midnight until about 6 a.m., there was nothing but static or colorful lines. I told my niece and nephew this, and their young minds just couldn't process the concept. Story 14. The level of fear associated with calling a girl and hoping her father didn't pick up was significant. It was one level of fear just to dial the number, but hearing the phone ring was another. Then, when the call was answered, there was a moment of anxiety about who had picked up. It was a multi-stage process of stress and fear. Story 15. I played outside and wasn't allowed in the house until dark. My punishment for misbehaving was being inside on a beautiful sunny day. I would sneak out of the house to play because I wanted to be outside. Not one adult in my household knew where I was while playing with other neighborhood kids for several hours every day. No one was concerned. I drank water from the hose when I got thirsty. There were no cell phones or internet. I was completely content. This was normal. Story 16. My mother was not allowed to have her own credit card, even though she did all the shopping for the family. Story 17. Getting a new album and listening to it, preferably with headphones, without doing anything else is a wonderful experience. I just gave my daughter the album Burn by Deep Purple for her birthday. I told her to wait until she had time to play the album fully. She should enjoy the beauty of those songs, including the contributions from Coverdale and Hughes. Story 18. When I was 7, I could walk 30 minutes across the city alone to visit my friend, both unsupervised. I didn't even know how to dial my mom on a landline phone. I came home close to dark. I can't imagine letting my child do that nowadays. Story 19. Not being able to reach anyone in the world 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without internet or social media, and relying on handwritten notes or a mechanical typewriter. Story 20. We had a booklet distributed to students at the beginning of the year containing all students' names, parents' names, phone numbers, email addresses, and home addresses. It was helpful for coordinating birthday parties, but now it seems like too much personal information for the entire student body to receive in paper form. Story 21. I was just watching what was on TV. Kids are so spoiled with streaming. They want to watch specific episodes and pressure me to find the right one. Back in my day, we watched 5 reruns of the same episode in a row, and we were happy. Story 22. If we got through 3/4 of the movie and wanted to start it again from that same point, we would have to watch a blue screen with the letters B and E at opposite ends of a line with dots and guess where we left off. Sometimes we spent longer waiting than watching the movie. There was no effective fast-forwarding. The movie would just start right from the beginning unless we went through the blue screen first. Story 23. Having to pay extra for a long-distance phone call, when long distance might only be a half-hour drive away, or waiting to make a call because rates were cheaper after a certain time of day. Story 24. If you missed an episode of a show, you were in trouble. While they might repeat it later in the year, that wasn't guaranteed. There are some episodes of shows I enjoyed as a child that have never been rebroadcast and are not available anywhere. I also can't count how many times I recorded a show only to find extended coverage of today's golf tournament instead when I went to watch it. Story 25. We used to listen in on our neighbors' conversations on the shared telephone line. Sometimes your conversation would be interrupted by someone informing you that you had been using the line for too long and they needed to make a call. Story 26. Call your girlfriend's house and explain to her father that you would like to speak with her. Story 27. Using a prepaid card to connect to the internet through a dial-up modem, while ensuring that no one picked up the phone during your online session, was quite challenging. Additionally, splitting a single game into 4 or 5 floppy disks and hoping that none of them got corrupted when restoring the file added to the frustration. Story 28. Calling your parents collect, and when they ask for your name, you provide the location where you need to be picked up. Story 29. No on-demand television. I had to be home and in front of the television at 8 p.m. on Thursdays to watch a single episode of The Simpsons. No internet. Go outside and don't return until dinner time. Story 30. Getting all tangled in the phone cord while talking to your significant other for 2 hours. Then your mom knocks on your bedroom door and asks you to hang up because she wants to call her friend from the quilting club. Story 31. My children will never understand not using the phone while someone is on the internet or not being allowed to call their friends until after 6 p.m. Story 32. To listen to a CD in a car without a CD player, I had to bring my portable CD player and an adapter with a cassette and cigarette lighter socket insert. Story 33. Calling someone long distance to convey a message, with the intention for them to refuse the call. Story 34. Knowing where your friends were because everyone's bikes were lying in the front yard of one friend's house. Story 35. A train book. Puzzling through the arrival and departure of a series of trains while trying to figure out the optimal way to travel. Story 36. I would ride my bike or pony 5 miles to my best friend's house, and we would explore the back roads together, following trails and swimming in strip mine ponds. We didn't have a cell phone or a pager, and our parents were completely fine with us being gone for about 12 hours. Story 37. Not having a cell phone or tablet. My daughter still cannot believe we lived without them, and she will be 16 on Sunday. There were only 3 television channels to choose from. Turning the television to channel 3 and flipping a switch in the back to play video games without the ability to save progress. Being taught home economics and basic budgeting, including balancing a checkbook. Things were less sexualized. I could continue for days. Story 38. The rumors that Marilyn Manson had one of his ribs removed and that Jamie Lee Curtis was a hermaphrodite spread across schoolyards nationwide before the internet became popular. Story 39. The freedom we had. Out in the morning with no need to return home until the streetlights came on. The adventures we experienced, the forts we built, and the mischief we engaged in were unforgettable. I don't think children today will ever share the same bond that my friends and I, along with other groups, had in the 1980s. Story 40. Calling someone from a phone kiosk by inserting 3 large copper coins, waiting for them to answer, and then pressing button A. If they do not answer, Press button B to retrieve your money. Story 41. Sometimes just inserting it won't work. You have to blow on it and then insert it. Good old classic Nintendo cartridge games. Story 42. Carrying a BB gun more than a mile from your home for target practice without worrying about being shot by a police officer. Toy rifles and toy guns that resemble real firearms. Story 43. Struggling with the television antennas to get a clear picture is one thing I do not miss from my childhood. Story 44. Everything, it seems. Look at how many people don't know how component cables work. They don't know what a rotary phone is and can't read an analog clock. Story 45. When your stereo consumes the cassette, you have to spool it back in using a pencil. If you wanted to see a movie, you either had to look up showtimes in the newspaper or call a number to listen to a recorded message listing the showings. Watching the news to find out if your school was closed for a snow day. Story 46. Actual cheat codes. Keeping yourself entertained. Thinking for yourself. Memorizing phone numbers. Manual transmissions. Story 47. 7-digit dialing, or in rare cases, 4-digit dialing was used. A sticker on the telephone displayed the sheriff's number because emergency services had not been implemented yet. Story 48. Being halfway through a video game and having a parent say, "Go play outside," only to then turn off the game system, wiping away all of the progress. Story 49. Needing to remember or write down phone numbers was essential. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to call anyone. I used to have a small notebook where I wrote down numbers, which I kept in my wallet because I struggled to remember phone numbers. Another aspect that today's kids probably wouldn't understand is having to pay per minute for phone calls and text messages on a mobile phone. When I was 17 or 18, I got my first mobile phone, and it cost around $2.50 per minute to call people and about 55 cents per text message. These days, I have unlimited service to numbers within Australia and certain other countries for less per month than what I would pay for 10 minutes of calls when I was a teenager. Additionally, data was incredibly expensive back then. I believe it was around $2 per megabyte, but since there wasn't much you could do with that data, it wasn't a major concern at the time. Story 50. Not being reachable all the time can be frustrating. You set up a time and place to meet beforehand and counted on others to show up. When they don't, it's disappointing. Story 51. Waking up on a Saturday morning, your whole family is asleep, and you have the TV to yourself. You spend the entire morning watching Saturday morning shows. Whether it was 4Kids, Teletoon, Vortex, ABC Kids, Jetix, YTV, or any of your local channels, I miss that. Shout out to YTV's The Crunch too. It made Sunday mornings just as fun. Story 52. Not knowing the answer to any question you have immediately can be frustrating. If you do not know, you can only hope to find out someday. Story 53. Being 7 and left at home by yourself for hours, or just going outside until the street lights come on. Story 54. Running to the bathroom during commercial breaks while watching a movie and yelling for your family to tell you when the movie starts again. Or gathering with your family in the living room at 7:50 p.m. so you don't miss the start of the movie at 8 p.m. Story 55. With the current state of the world, there is a lack of existential dread, and people believe their futures are bright. Story 56. My child feels frustrated when he is bored, and I suggest he go watch television or something similar. Television is boring, he responds. I remind him that he has 8 streaming services available to watch content to his heart's content in his bedroom. We had 1 television and cable. If my mother wanted to watch television, there was no discussion. It meant no more television for me. If my show aired while she was watching, I could only hope they would play a rerun that week. I cannot understand being bored when one has the ability to watch whatever they want. Story 57. As a child, I manually changed the television channel to one of the 5 available options because my parent did not want to get off the couch. Story 58. I was growing up in a brief period when smartphones were already commonplace but were just inadequate enough not to overtake all human activity. The power of the internet was at our fingertips, yet we remained free and independent, using it sparingly when necessary. Adults knew smartphones existed but didn't use them. Businesses didn't engage in memes. Politicians didn't participate in meme culture. Teachers still believed all the kids were into hip-hop and breakdancing. Vertical videos were associated exclusively with older individuals who didn't know how a typical person records a video. It was a beautiful time. Story 59. Getting completely blacked out caused a full-blown situation, waking up with a shiner and zero evidence of what actually happened. The days before social media were something else. I once got blacked out, fell off a roof into a pool, tried to break into a school, took a swing at a police officer, and woke up in the drunk tank. Took me 2 years to figure out what happened. The only reason I did was that I ran into a guy I used to play basketball against years later, and he asked me what happened that night. It turns out he found me wandering the streets, and I told him my house was the school's address. He kicked me out of the car after I threw up in it. If that happened today, the whole situation would have been live-streamed, and I would probably be unemployable. Story 60. Setting a sporting event to record on your video cassette recorder or digital video recorder, and then exceeding the allotted programming window can result in not having the end recorded. Story 61. Knowledge enters your mind through word of mouth or from a library. If you want to learn something while sitting on the sofa, simply take out your device and seconds later you will have the information you need. Story 62. The overall lack of media availability in the past was evident. If something was on broadcast television or cable, you had to plan ahead to watch it. Video cassette recorders were great because you could record programs airing on TV. You could rent or buy a movie, but availability was limited to whether the store had it in stock and if someone hadn't already rented it. Music was available through radio, cassette tapes, compact discs, or record players. If you didn't already own a specific album, you were limited to the selection that stores had on hand. If they had to order it for you, it could take months to arrive. I admit that I am spoiled by today's instant access to media. However, I sometimes get upset when one streaming service drops a show I am watching, and I have to find it on another platform. Story 63. The constant dialing of the 5 internet numbers, all busy of course, and having to wait for it to start over, running for hours until you could finally connect to the internet. Don't disconnect. Story 64. 70s and 80s television series in general. My 16-year-old daughter just gapes in boredom when shown shows that, at her age and at the time, had me mesmerized and counting the days until the next episode, such as Blake 7, Sapphire and Steel, Tom Baker's era of Doctor Who, and Space, 1999. To her, they all seem stagey, pedestrian, and incredibly slow. Everyone is white and speaks in a posh manner. Mind you, we are white and speak in a posh manner as well. As for trying to convey how desperately important it was to see each episode broadcast at a time decided by the television schedulers, if you missed it, you would never see that particular episode again. They understand intellectually but cannot truly comprehend. Story 65. Today, I explained the concept of rewinding a video cassette recorder after finishing watching it to my son. I'm not sure it really resonated with him. Story 66. Saturday morning cartoons were my time alone with complete control of the television. Our family sat down to eat dinner around 5:30 to 6 o'clock every night and watched the same primetime shows that most people watched, along with the news. Story 67. I'm almost 22, so I am not even that old, but I don't think kids will ever understand what it's actually like to do homework. Most of them just use chatbots or search engines for everything, but back in my day, we actually did our homework. Sure, I might have searched for the answer to a math question or two, but I actually did the majority of my work on my own. Story 68. Real gritty stuff, sitting on the curb with dirt on your knees and giving your boyfriend a mixtape with "Our Jams" written on it. Oh gosh, I feel old. Kids won't understand how it was in the 90s. Story 69. The fact that our parents did not know exactly where we were all the time and did not have the ability to contact us at all times. Some nights, I would go out roaming the neighborhood with my friends, and my parents did not know I was alive until I came home before curfew. That was totally normal and fine. Story 70. Having to tune in every week to watch a new episode because the entire series wasn't released at once drove me crazy while watching The Pit. I don't watch regular television anymore. I just stream. The kids had the remote with only 3 channels: ABC, CBS or NBC. No CNN or Fox News. I miss watching old horror movies on a UHF channel late on Saturday night. I miss Dr. Sanguinary and Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Story 71. Mom needed to call Aunt Deb to talk about her day, which meant I had to get off the internet for at least the next 30 to 45 minutes. Story 72. The ice cream vendor had every Ferrara pan flavor of candy. Cherries, lemon heads, jawbreakers, and Boston baked beans. Story 73. There were no smartphones or tablets. Most families only had one computer, so they had to take turns. If someone else was on the phone, the internet was interrupted until they hung up. Story 74. Being taken out at 9 a.m. after breakfast, not being allowed back in unless we were hurt or sick, and ensuring that we got home before the streetlights came on. Story 75. Nobody had cell phones, internet, or computers of any kind. We used payphones or landlines. On Fridays, we made our plans at school and just showed up wherever the party was. Honestly, it was a lot easier in many ways. Story 76. I hated that I missed the episode of SpongeBob where he shrank everyone in Bikini Bottom because everyone was talking about it the next day. I couldn't just watch it another day. Story 77. So many people growing up in the 1990s. I feel sad knowing that technology has taken over in the worst way for them. We do our best to eliminate or greatly reduce screen time, but it is unavoidable. They will hang out with their cousins for a few hours, and instead of playing outside, they just watch videos and come back home with all sorts of nonsense. Story 78. The terror when, after building up the courage to call your crush on the landline, her father picks up the phone. Story 79. Speedrunning a game you were renting so you could return it on time. I never saw the end of the original Metal Gear Solid. Story 80. The only way to talk to a girl outside of school was to call her house phone. Asking her dad to speak with her was nerve-wracking. When I got a girlfriend in grade 8, we would schedule times to call each other. We'd set alarms for around 3 a.m., grab the cordless phone, head back to bed, and make a quick half-ring call to let the other know we were ready. Story 81. Unstructured play with friends. No video games, no texting or social media, no hanging out and watching videos or movies, no parents hovering or supervising us. We would just go outside and return when the streetlights came on. I might tell my mom the general direction I was heading, saying, "Hey, I'm heading over to Robbie's house. See you." We would climb trees, play in a creek or storm drain, shoot BB guns, build forts, and walk or ride our bikes to school to play on the playground during the weekend. We would explore the forest, play pickup games of sports, kick the can, or play hide and seek. Sometimes we would explore new houses being built in the neighborhood and cause mischief. Story 82. Carrying around a 2-pence coin for the phone booth in case of an emergency, along with memorizing your home phone number. Story 83. Calling your mom at work and asking the receptionist if she is available. Calling your friends at home and having to talk to their mom first. Story 84. Always watching the same episode on Disney Channel. He could be the one. Waking up late at night on a school night to watch Violetta or Avatar, The Last Airbender, because they only aired at 1:30 a.m. or 3 a.m. Birthday parties at McDonald's. No further explanation needed. All the paper and online love tests that we used to take. The mustache thing. Recording songs with your phone because you couldn't download them. Kicking the modem or shaking the monitor in the hopes that the computer would suddenly work. Layers and layers of windows opened because the computer was too slow. Story 85. This might not apply to me, but it does relate to some people I've known. Memory cards were essential for saving games without worrying about starting over due to a game over, especially on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I don't think the Nintendo Entertainment System had memory cards. That feature began with the PlayStation and possibly the Nintendo 64. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I remember memory cards were a huge thing in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Story 86. Calling a girl and having to talk with her dad can be challenging. It is sometimes preferred to get to know her through chat rather than directly. Story 87. Going outside for 14 hours on a Saturday while your parents did not mind, as long as you came back for dinner. Story 88. Taking a roll of film to a photo lab and waiting 5 days for it to be developed and printed. An additional fee is required for same-day service. Story 89. Every neighborhood had a known offender, and parents would simply advise their children, "Don't go near Steve's house." Story 90. If we weren't where we told our parents we would be, we might as well have been on the moon. There was no way for them to contact us or track us. Story 91. Not being allowed to flake on plans because nobody had cell phones meant that if you didn't show up, you wouldn't have a friend. Story 92. Party phone lines allowed multiple households to share a single phone line, with each home having a unique ring. If you were clever, you could eavesdrop on other people's calls. Additionally, you could not use the phone while someone in another house was using it. Story 93. Seeing fireflies in the summer and cleaning the windshield on road trips because of all the splattered bugs. Story 94. The true joy and excitement of the late 1990s and early 2000s school Christmas parties right before the holiday break were remarkable. The spirit of Christmas was much more palpable during those days compared to now. Story 95. Basically everything related to television involved having to watch whatever was available. You would watch 2 shows at once by flipping between 2 stations during their commercials. When your parents wanted to use the television, you had to find something else to do. Children's shows were only on until early evening. After that, you had to watch the History Channel with your dad and endure the boredom. The History Channel featured real history, not just alien content all the time. There was no option to pause. Story 96. Spending hours winding up a toy daredevil on a motorcycle and making it jump over created dangers, such as a fire. Story 97. Jacking our cars up high in the back and putting large tires in the rear and small tires in the front. For what reason, I don't know. I guess we wanted our cars to be worse than they already were. Story 98. Being left home alone from age 5 onward during summer break, making your own lunches, and having a list of neighbor phone numbers in case you needed to reach an adult. Exploring forests, farmers' fields, abandoned buildings, graveyards, and more with friends. Walking or riding your bike along the busy highway to get to the next town to buy candy. Building forts and tree houses, jumping out of them and injuring yourself. Shooting rusty cans and sometimes your siblings with BB gun pellets. Catching insects, frogs, birds, and mice. Touching electric fences with long blades of grass. Playing doctor with neighborhood kids using leaves and sticks. Coordinating choreography with friends and cousins while using your grandfather's video camera to record fake commercials for Coca-Cola. Lying on your elderly neighbor's asphalt driveway after swimming to warm up and dry off. Raiding their garden for cherry tomatoes. This was the early 1990s. Story 99. Admiring immigrants to the United States for their work ethic and willingness to sacrifice instead of treating them as lazy individuals who should leave. This was in Southeast Texas in the 1970s. Story 100. While I grew up with YouTube as a child, I also experienced a time when music channels were the primary way to discover new artists or enjoy our favorite ones. Much Music, Stingray, and Black Entertainment Television were staples in my household. I remember when my sisters and I found an artist we liked, we would scramble to find pieces of paper to write down the artist's name and hope they had their music uploaded on YouTube or available elsewhere on the internet. Shazam and Spotify really came in handy. Story 101. Burning CDs. I had a conversation about this one day, and someone asked, "Why would you go through all that effort? Just use Spotify or something." I tell you, the audiophile in me, knowing that free lossless audio codec is king, was raging inside. Story 102. I am 16 and I still know about DVDs. I watched them with my grandparents. It's really nostalgic for me. Story 103. Listening to the radio on AM. I was fortunate to have a World War II shortwave radio. I could listen to Voice of America and the BBC. Nobody had heard of shortwave back then, and FM came out later, which amazed us by allowing us to listen to music without static. I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I would create mixtapes recorded from the radio. I was so passionate about radio that I decided to become a DJ. It sounded thrilling. I got my first job as a DJ at age 17 on a local station that had an agreement with my school. We weren't overwhelmed by media outlets that broadcast content around the clock. Television had only 3 channels: ABC, NBC, and CBS. Television and radio stations signed off before midnight by playing the national anthem, meaning there was no media after midnight. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.